Guitar solos are full of sequences. And one of the most commonly used and difficult sequences in rock and metal is the 3 notes per string ascending sequence. Here's the problem with this sequence though. When you hear a lot of amateurs playing this 3 notes per string lines, they will always use hammer-ons and it sounds so amateurish. And the reason why we as amateurs use hammer-ons is because we realize that alternate picking every single note is extremely hard. But why is that? Why is it so hard? Let me break it down for you. The first reason is because you don't have as much time to transition strings on 3 note per string as opposed to say 6 notes per string. If you watch my right hand, look how much time I have to switch strings on a 6 note per string. So we start with 3 notes, transition. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then transition. Then transition. And then transition. Now that was mostly 6 notes per string, and that's a lot easier to alternate pick. It's not easy to alternate pick, but it's easier than 3 notes per string because you have a lot more time to transition strings. Another reason why 3 notes per string is so difficult to alternate pick is because you have to change the angle of your pick every time you string transition. 1, 2, 3, and then I transition to the next string after a downstroke. Down, up, down to the next string, and then up. Then from there, if I'm starting the next string on an upstroke, up, down, up, I have to tilt my pick this way to get to the next string. Whereas the first string transition, it was down, up, down, and I can kind of keep it at an upward angle like that. And then I have to go up, down, up, and sort of tilt it this way to get to that string. And this rocking back and forth in between strings can really cause this bounce in your right hand. Whereas like 6 note per string, you can actually keep your pick at the same level angle the whole time because every string transition is gonna be after a downstroke. So you don't need to be doing this and then this and then this. Watch. So 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Downstroke, string transition. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it's not the case for 3 notes per string. There's the first string transitions after a downstroke, then the next string transitions after an upstroke, then the next string transitions after a down, then an up, then a down. And this is something worthy of your attention and time to get good at, but today that's not what it's about. It's not about alternate picking this. We're gonna learn a hack or a cheat code that will allow you to play 3 notes per string really fluidly and clean at really high speeds. And it's simply just by mixing in a hammer-on into your alternate picking. So like pick, pick, hammer-on, pick, pick, hammer-on, pick, pick, hammer-on. I'm gonna show you exactly how I mix hammer-ons in to 3 notes per string, specifically with this sequence that we're using today. There's 2 ways that I think you should approach this. The first way is the way that I do it, which is, so what I'm doing is I'm going down, up, down, alternate picking the first 3 notes, and I'll explain to you why I'm doing that in a second. Then I go up, down, hammer on, and then next string, up, down, hammer on, next string, up, down, hammer on, next string, up, down, hammer on. And the reason why I'm doing this is because this allows my pick to transition to a new string after a downstroke every time. That's the first reason. And the reason why this is important is because I can keep my pick at this sort of angle the whole time. I don't have to rock this way to transition to a string. So if I go pick, 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 and keep my pick at this angle, my pick will fly over the adjacent string for the upstroke that comes next. Down, up, down. And then from there, I'm gonna do pick, pick, hammer on, pick, pick, hammer on. And you'll see that every string transition, I string transition after a downstroke. Up, down, hammer on, up, down, hammer on, up, down, hammer on, up. Okay, so it looks like this a little faster. And then I alternate pick the last 3 notes, so it's And as you can tell, it sounds almost like it's alternate picked every single note because 90% of the notes are alternate picked. There's just that one hammer on here and there that allows you to transition strings easier, and that's the biggest hang up for most people with alternate picking 3 notes per string is the string transitions. That brings me to my second reason why I do this. It gives me more time to transition strings. So again, to recap, the first reason is that it allows me to keep my pick at the same upward angle to transition to new strings so I don't have to bounce like this. And the second reason is that it simply gives me more time to transition to a new string so that I can stay relaxed. Now there's 2 tips that I'm going to give you when practicing this exercise. The first tip has to do with left hand control. Now since we're adding in a hammer on, every third stroke pretty much, we have to be really in control of that hammer on. That hammer on can't snap on the string too quickly, and it can't snap on too softly. Otherwise, the attack of every note won't sound proportional. What I mean by that is you want every note to have the same volume and attack. You don't want this, right? You don't want that third hammer-on note to be soft and weak. So to train this left-hand coordination, what I actually do is I isolate my left hand and I'll just tap all the notes with a metronome. Click, 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 click. And what I'm doing is I'm focusing on every finger being individually coordinated and having the same snap and attack. Then when you add the right hand in again, you're going to apply that same finger coordination and snap with the right hand as well. That's going to allow these hammer-ons that you're adding in to sound really sharp and attacky so that it almost sounds like it's being picked. The next thing that I focus on during this practice, which is crucial, which is really I credit this practice technique to the levels that I've been able to get to at guitar, which is playing from click to click. Some people call this chunking, but essentially, especially when I get to higher speeds, I'll just start with like a couple clicks. So if I'm starting at like 190 beats per minute, the triplets would be, and I just want to go from the first click to the second click. And what I'm focusing on is I'm focusing on that left hand coordination and that attack, the individual finger movement in my left hand. Then I'll add another click and that hammer on. I might spend a whole practice session on 2 clicks, just that. But if I'm feeling good, then I'll add another click. As you can tell, it has a really cool sound because it almost sounds like it's alternate picked, but there's a little different sort of character to it. And I actually think in a lot of instances, it sounds cooler than just straight alternate picking. It sounds a little bit more fluid. So to recap, to conquer 3 notes per string, you can add in hammer-on. So what I'm doing is I'm picking the first 3 notes, and then from there I'm going pick, pick, hammer-on, pick, pick, hammer-on. You can mess around with that, or you can mess around with pick, pick, hammer-on from the very start. And again, this allows you to keep your pick at the same angle the whole time without having to bounce, and it gives you more time to transition strings. Not to mention it adds a really cool and unique sound that's a little bit different than strict alternate picking and definitely different than just straight legato. So give this a try and let me know in the comments what you think of this technique.